Well, it was Cleveland Rock City today, and maybe it's time we give the Guardians their due.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, and this episode is brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB and win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And I need to run my mouth a little bit here. A couple people have said that I have kind of shortchanged my enthusiasm for the Cleveland Guardians. Well, I don't feel that I have, I'm certainly not anti-Cleveland. I would love to see the Guardians do very well. Thank you very much. I was the only non-Cub fan in the world who was, rooting for Cleveland in 2016. But I admit, the other day, I probably shortchanged them a little bit. They played a super dramatic game, and I was focusing mainly on Tanner Bybee and some other stuff instead of the great game that was played. And so, I'm guilty as charged about maybe not giving Cleveland their due. However, here we are, and let's give them their due. Let's give them their due big time because they are in the American League Championship Series. And by the way, the division series are now all wrapped up. And I am not going to go, I'm now going to shortchange the Mets and Dodgers because I'm going to be doing a full show about the NLCS, previewing it and reviewing what happened against San Diego the other day. This is all about the American League Division Series today. So don't worry, I'll get to the Dodgers, I'll get to the Mets, I'll get to the final game against San Diego. Do not worry about that. Today's all about Cleveland. And I have to admit, this was a very strange series. And this is a very strange series about wild momentum shifts. In the very first inning of the first game of this series, Lane Thomas hit the big home run. Cleveland was up 5-0. This looked like it was going to be a breeze. And they had the 0-0 game going into the ninth. Just have Class A strike out the kid Carpenter, then get a run in the bottom of the ninth. They're up 2-0. Suddenly Carpenter homers off of Class A. And before you can blink, it is a 1-1 series. And then Cleveland's bats did not show up in Game 3. And let's face it, in Game 4, even though the Guardians scored in the first and the fifth, they looked dead from the neck up. And when Detroit took a 3-2 lead in the sixth, and there was 2 outs, and pinch hitter David Fry up, I thought they were dead. I thought this was a situation. It seems like every year there's one complete wild underdog that sneaks into the league championship series. And this year it was going to be the Tigers, who weren't even a playoff team, weren't even a wild card team until late in September. They had to leapfrog Minnesota and came out of nowhere. And it looked like this was a classic example of they were the hot team for the last about month and a half. No team was better in baseball than Detroit, and they're carrying that right into it. And I'm sitting there, walking around the farmer's market in South Pasadena, picking up dinner and listening to the game, thinking, oh, man, this is going to be it for the Tigers and for Cleveland. The Tigers are going to the ALCS. Who knew? Then David Fry came up to be a pinch hitter. He was facing Bo Brisky, who's pitched pretty well. And there's 2 outs, top of the 7th. And it's like, get this final out. And then 6 more outs. And then next thing you know, the Tigers go in the ALCS. And Fry hits the home run. Boom. And then Fry bunts in a safety squeeze to give them the insurance run, which they desperately needed because Clase wound up letting up a run. I mean, that is a phenomenal turning of events. And you see that in some series. There are wild examples of it, like obviously the most famous one is probably the Dave Roberts steal and the Bill Miller single, but there's the Jim Leyritz home run in 1996. There is the Scott Spezio home run in 2002. That moment when a series that looked like everything was going in one direction suddenly does a detour. The cop jumping up and down in the bullpen for the Red Sox in 2013 is probably another one of those. And that was the Fry home run here. It looked like it was going to be Detroit in 4. And it was something else which led to this game. And I have to tell you, folks, I didn't think Cleveland had a prayer. I'm going to be full out. People who think I'm a Cleveland hater, I'm not. But I didn't think they had a prayer because I thought they pushed it to Game 5. But Skubal, who hasn't let up a run since I think the 2013 World Series, I may have to look that up, was on the mound. And for the first 4 innings of this game, this looked like the Skubal show, even though it was no score. And I was absolutely just cursing at the radio because I kept saying, come on, Vogt. Give your pitchers stretch your pitchers out a little bit. Stretch them out a tiny bit. Because, they're through 4 innings, the Tigers had 2 hits and 2 walks. It wasn't like they were, launching things left and right, but Cleveland already burned through Boyd, Smith, and Sobrowski. And I'm thinking to myself, geez, you're burning through all your pitchers. If this goes into extra innings, who the hell are you going to pitch? Slider? And then a kid, Walters, came up. And Walters looks like he just started shaving. He pitched 9 more games in the major leagues than me. And, pitched well in his cameo at the end of the year. But, man, he looked tight. And once again, couldn't find the strike zone. And eventually, the run came in, and it was 1-0. And when it was 1-0 Detroit, I'm listening to the game. Full disclosure, I prefer listening to games. I do. I think this is a remnant of COVID, when I could not watch the games with the cardboard cutouts. So I just always listened to games during the COVID season because I could imagine a full house. I could imagine the World Series was being played in the Trop and at Dodger Stadium instead of all in Texas. And so and the COVID year reintroduced to me the great love of just listening to the game. So I'm listening to the game while walking my dog, Eleanor. And it's 1-0. And I said to Eleanor, who's a dog, there is no way Cleveland's going to win this game because Skubal is too good. He is too freaking good against Houston, against Cleveland. He is just too strong. They're not going to be scoring. They're not going to score a run off him. Cleveland didn't score a run in games 2 or 3. They had a little burst in game 4, but I said, nope, this offense is dead. It's deader than dead. And did I mention dead? And then some cracks in the armor. By the way, and remember, Skubal worked out of some issues. There was some sloppy defense. There were runners on second and third. But all of a sudden, Kwan, who I think batted 900 in this series, if there was a division series MVP, it absolutely would have been Kwan. Or maybe absolutely. And with bases loaded, he had no choice but to pitch to Jose Ramirez. And he hits him. Now it's tied. It's 1-1. And I remember thinking, of course, that's the only way you're going to score off of Skubal is he hits you with the bases loaded. Now, I also at that point thought there's no way they're going to score any more runs this inning. So it's going to be 1-1. And my brain is already going, well, who's left? How are they going to do this? How are they going to do that? And in comes Lane Thomas, Captain Bookend. That's what I'm dubbing him, Captain Bookend. Because, well, he started the series with a huge home run that put the Tigers on their heels, and he ended the series with a grand slam. I couldn't believe my ears. By the way, Hamilton, the announcer for Cleveland, was going nuts. I don't know who his fellow announcers, but he also was going nuts. And when he hit the grand slam and it became 5-1, I just looked at my dog and said, I can't believe it. And clearly my dog couldn't believe it either because she was speechless. And yes, give Detroit some credit. They came back. They made it 5-3 with Keith on second and the tying run at the plate. But guess who gave him insurance? Lane Thomas again. And then they wound up tacking one more run on, and give a lot of credit. And I'm going to talk about who we're going to give credit to, and that is Mr. Vogt, the manager. But Clase came out when Morgan didn't have it and pitched the final 2 innings because it's that kind of a game. Don't worry about how tired he is. You have a chance to go to the ALCS. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about my frustration with how pitching staffs are set up, but the fact that there are 2 people whose teams are still playing that we have to give a ton of credit to because they managed to go through this shining hedge maze and come out the other end with their teams 4 wins away from the World Series. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn a very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Hey, fans of Locked On MLB, let me make a suggestion. We have Locked On Guardians. We have Locked On Yankees. We have Locked On Dodgers, and we have Locked On Mets. 4 teams are left standing. Check out all of their shows. They're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. You may hear upstairs, that's Eleanor. She's barking. All right, let's get back to business here. I mentioned that I got frustrated because I mentioned this, and maybe I'm a broken record about this. This is not old man Sully, okay? This is not in my days, they were 9. It's my frustration that a lot of times these managers are not letting a pitcher go that extra inning that could go a long way in stretching out a pitching staff. You know, as I mentioned, 4 innings into the game, Cleveland let up no runs, pair of hits, and a pair of walks. And they had burned through 4 pitchers. Clearly, none of them were getting rocked. And I understand the strength of when a team's strength is its bullpen. But there's a danger that comes about when that bullpen has to pitch 7 or 8 innings a game. I think we saw the result of that with Philadelphia. There was a bunch of people posting saying they lost because they didn't have heart. Oh, stop. Nobody can measure someone's heart unless you're a cardiologist. All right? Every team has players out there who are busting their hump and trying their best. You don't think they were trying, the Philadelphia Phillies? What are you, nuts? They wanted this so badly they could taste it. Is it possible that they lost the game because the Mets are also a good team? There are not going to be any bad teams left. Every team got here because of heart and guts. So don't get into that. And the Tigers got here with a ton of players who no one was counting on anything, and they could potentially build something really great. But it's dangerous if you're going to be having 5, 6, 7 innings a game from your bullpen and expecting not only every pitcher to do their job every day. You're doing that assuming you're not going to have a clunker of an outing, but also take advantage of, hey, if a pitcher's throwing great, why wouldn't you see if you can get another inning out of them? Now, I understand this is an elimination game. I do. So you have to manage differently. I always bring up the fact that Bruce Bochy brought in Madison Bumgarner in the 4th inning of Game 7 of the World Series. And Jimmy Williams brought Pedro Martinez in the 4th inning of Game 5 of the 1999 Division Series. That wouldn't normally happen. Nor would Randy Johnson when he came in Game 7 of the World Series on 0 days rest. I understand in elimination games you play it a little differently. But the problem is a lot of these teams have been managed like they've been elimination games since, mid-August. And I kept thinking, every time I heard, well, here comes Vogt to make a change, I kept grumbling, said, this is a close game. If this goes in the 10th, 11th, 12th inning, are you really going to have just someone you would not want in a big situation pitching in an elimination moment? And it's Justin Lamas, who listens to us a lot, says, throw a bullpen guy, you need one guy to not have it for it not to work. Yeah. I mean, you're setting up dominoes. And I'm not even talking about, my day, it was Steve Carlton would go 10 innings in a 9-inning game. No, I'm not talking about that. I understand that you're going to have the best staffs that I've seen have a strong starting rotation and a strong bullpen. And it's a symbiotic relationship. The pitchers go deep in the game, so the bullpen is relatively fresh, which makes the bullpen effective, so the starting pitcher doesn't have to pitch in innings when they're gassed. And I could go to 9 years ago, the Kansas City Royals won back-to-back pennants. And the strength of their pennants was the bullpen. But they still had, they didn't have Glavine, Maddox, Smoltz in their rotation. But they had Volquez, who was a good pitcher. They had the late Yordano Ventura. They had Jeremy Guthrie. They had Johnny Cueto. They had Chris Young. They had pitchers who could at least bring the game to the 5th or 6th. And then you bring in Greg Holland or Wade Davis. And Holland was really effective in 2014. He was hurt in 2015, but you had Wade Davis and, Kelvin Herrera and, Franklin Morales and all Luke Hochevar and Ryan Matz and all these other pitchers who were able to come in and, go deep. But it went back and forth. In fact, the last pitcher to throw a complete game in a World Series was on that 2015 team, Johnny Cueto. You have to have someone. You have to take him to 5th or 6th because you can't have your bullpen throwing 6 innings a game, even in the playoffs, because they're going to get gassed. They're absolutely going to get gassed. That was the thing that made the whole, Blake Snell situation with Tampa so frustrating. That Tampa's bullpen was gassed, and Snell was pitching like an ace, and they pulled him because, well, according to this, he's about to face it for the 2nd time through. So, that being said, as Ruth W. says, Dave Roberts deserved a ton of credit for his bullpen management the last 2 games. So does Stephen Vogt. Both of them do. Dave Roberts and Stephen Vogt in these 2 games have had to do a juggling act like crazy. Tanner Bybee didn't go deep in the game. It drove me crazy they didn't bring him out for the, he only faced 1 batter in the 5th. And Cade Smith looked a little bit lumpy. But in the end, Smith, Gaddis, Heron, and Clase coming in the 8th inning, they did the job. Same thing today, facing off against Skubal, who, save for one inning, has been absolutely unhittable this postseason. You have to give Vogt a ton of credit as well. A ton of credit. Being able to manage the bullpen and walk away when all the momentum in the world was going the way of the Detroit Tigers. Just like in the National League, all the momentum in the world was securely in San Diego. They had the narrative that they had the hit batter and Manny Machado gives a speech and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And the Dodgers were, got blown out, and then they lose game 3. And it's like, oh, that's it. This is a Padres year. And like, oh my God, the Tigers are the team of destiny. Boom. Big home runs for Cleveland. And with that came the big bullpen management. Justin Lamas makes another great point. Says most bullpen guys only have 2 pitches, meaning hitters can solve them if they see him way more often. Yeah, there's no surprise. If you bring the same bunch of pitchers out every single game of a 5-game series, guess what's going to happen? The other team's got to figure them out. So, that being said, give Vogt a huge, if you will, vote of confidence. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2 big stars and moving forward to my thoughts on the ALCS. You know all about PrizePicks. Well, do you know what? Thank you so much for being a PrizePicks partner. Let me tell you something. PrizePicks is the best way to get real money on sports action. With more than 10 million members and billions of dollars in award-winning shots. Stepped on that one. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more than or less than on at least 2 or more players to shot up to 100 times your cash. You can, guess what? PrizePicks is the best way to get in sports in over 30 states, including Florida, Georgia, Texas, and right here in California. And it's the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half or it doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. And PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money as quick as 15 minutes. So, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Yeah, I mean, Stephen Kwan was unbelievable. He was a hitting machine. And if he can keep that going, he is going to be a gnat in the year of the Yankees. And hey, remember when what was actually, I got to look at what was the final. I want to get his final OPS and average. I know I'm not supposed to look at batting average anymore, but it's fascinating to me. I'm over here on MLB.com. Kwan's final batting average was 524. His OPS was 1.136. Now, Thomas batted 316 with a 948 OPS, not quite Kwansian numbers. But remember when Cleveland acquired Lane Thomas from Washington right around the trade deadline, they traded 3 minor league players, and a bunch of people said they probably overpaid for Lane Thomas. And guess what? No, they didn't. No, they did not. Yeah, Lane Thomas was not great in the regular season, and no one's going to care. They're going to the ALCS. And unless Alex Clemmie, Rafael Ramirez Jr., and Jose Tena all wind up giving Hall of Fame speeches for Washington, this is not going to be a bad trade at all for the Cleveland Guardians, who are going to face the Yankees. I think it's going to be a very good series. The Yankees can beat Cleveland for 2 reasons. If Garrett Cole pitches like he did in his second start, like he did in his first start, then the Yankees have an ace, which means that Aaron Boone won't have to do the bullpen juggling that Vogt and Dave Roberts would have to do. They also have to get on the pitchers early. Notice I didn't say the starting rotation because Cleveland doesn't really have a starting rotation right now. They have to get on the board early and put Cleveland on their heels. You saw that when when Cleveland lost the second game, that was one thing that happened. Obviously, the first game, that was the wild game with the Carpenter home run against Clase. But you get on the board early against Cleveland. In game 3, Detroit was on the board in the first, added another one in the third, and Cleveland was right back on its heels from the start. And even though the bullpen pitched pretty well, they only let up one run after the third inning. The Cleveland's bats were dead. So that's what the Yankees have to do. They have to have Garrett Cole pitch like Garrett Cole, and they have to have their offense jump all over the Cleveland's first few pitchers. For Cleveland, it comes down to this. They have to throw strikes. In the end, what killed Kansas City were all the walks. All the walks really, in many ways, did them in. And I am not kidding when I say this. All the walks did them in. Think about this for a second. The Yankees won the series with a game to spare. And Judge batted .154. He had one extra base hit. He struck out 5 times in 4 games. He hit no home runs, and Aaron Judge drove in 0 runs batted in. That is exactly what the Royals fans would have asked a genie for in terms of Aaron Judge. 1 extra base hit, 2 hits the entire series, no homers, no runs batted in. What are you, nuts? Absolutely, you would ask that. That Judge and Soto would combine for 0 homers and 2 runs batted in? Yeah, you would ask that. But guess what? Judge walked 5 times. In fact, in 4 games, the Yankees walked 28 times, or 27 times. That's 1 walk shy of going 8 walks per game. You can't do that. They 27 walks in 35 innings. That's what killed Kansas City. They got a mediocre start from Garrett Cole in game 1, and they basically shut down Soto and Judge and still lost because of the walks. Throw strikes. Throw strikes to the Yankees. Don't give them base runners. They won because Giancarlo Stanton had a fabulous series, but they allowed the players like Stanton and Gleyber Torres and Anthony Volpe and Austin Wells and Verdugo to become the heroes of the games when Soto and Judge were basically neutralized. So the Yankees have to score fast and score early, and Cleveland has to throw strikes. And if both teams do it, then we could have ourselves one terrific ALCS and one where both teams have a lot of heart. So give a huge thumbs up to Vogt. But hey, while we're here, let's also give a huge thumbs up to the Detroit Tigers, who showed a lot of guts for this team to come back when they were like, wait, how many games down were they they were on, they were 9 games under 500 in July, but they were 8 games under 500 in August and came storming in, had the fabulous September where they went 17-8 and leapfrogged the Minnesota Twins, who must be grinding their teeth right now, and had a and with a bunch of young kids, overwhelmed a star-studded Houston Astros team. Salute. Great stuff happening in the future for the Detroit Tigers. But now it's Cleveland time. And Cleveland wants to end all talk of a potential Subway Series by taking care of the Yankees. And we will see. That series starts in a couple of days. And I'm actually going to check something here because I actually don't know the answer to this. I want to see what the head-to-head record is between New York and Cleveland in the for the ALCS. They played 6 games, and the Yankees won 4 of them. So head-to-head matchup in the regular season, the Yankees had an edge. All right, we'll see what happens. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Giving Cleveland their due. Do you know why? Because they've earned it. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.